big morning, big night. So just to quickly recap, I know you played the audio earlier. That was the voice of the federal independent MP, Andrew Wilkie, dropping that bombshell in Parliament. He had a signed statement from the former Melbourne doctor Zishana Rain, and he told Parliament that the AFL covered or covers up players' drug taking with fake injuries to avoid positive tests on match days, and that if a player has drugs in his system, that he's advised, in fact, to lie about his condition while the drug results are kept secret. A workaround, he called it, was commonplace. Now, Rain's letter said that he himself conducted secret tests on players who confessed to taking drugs to ensure their systems were clear before games, and he states that this process was authorised by the AFL. In fact, in reading out a Rain's statement, Wilkie said the off-the-books drug testing of players at a Dorovich pathology facility in Heidelberg here in suburban Melbourne was organised and overseen by the former chief medical officer of the AFL, Dr. Peter Harcourt. And Rain, the Melbourne head doctor, well, for close to a decade before he was sacked in 2020, said the league did it, guys, to dodge breaches of the WADA code. And Wilkie last night called on the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, to personally intervene. He called the revelations deeply troubling, dangerous, that it subverted Sports Integrity Australia on behalf of WADA, and that it was a fraud on governments to provide millions of dollars in support to the AFL through various means. Now, that's one side.
Right, this is the thing. So this is what we've got. This is what we're dealing with, the crisis. I'm looking up on all the news services. This is the AFL on the surface appear to be in a world of pain. Are going to have to answer to this. What say you?
So I've spoken to the AFL this morning. The league don't deny this happens, and in fact they admit that it does happen. But they say that it sits well within their medical model, that if they have a player who has a problem with illicit drugs, that they have the ability to test them and to make sure they're not using on match days, to hold them out of play. Now, unless they have permission from the player to do otherwise, the league cites medical privacy, medical privilege, and that no one would want it known they might have an illicit drugs problem. They argue the idea that a club can say Billy Bloggs is out for 2 weeks for cocaine use is absolutely fanciful. The off-the-books claim, as raised in Parliament last night, the league will today state that every test is off the books for SEA, Sports Integrity Australia, and by extension WADA, except for match day. Why? Because those two bodies, they don't give a rat's about illicit drug use at any time outside of 11:59 p.m. the day before a game up until the end of the event. And that this, worth probably pointing out again, is a volunteer policy that the players have agreed to in the first place, one that the AFL understands no other code adopts or no other Olympian, for example, volunteers to. Now, people will say that's rubbish.
Okay, so I just want to try and get this right. So none of this is news to the AFL. They say, yes, it happens, and we know it happens, and that the explosive allegations from the doctor, in this instance a Melbourne doctor, is absolutely done with the imprimatur of the AFL.
Correct.
And that the drug policy only cares about what happens during the actual playing.
Well, that's WADA and that's SEA, that's performance enhancing, correct?
Right. So
now, this outside of that illicit drug testing is done by the AFL with a long-term contract with Dorovich Pathology. A welfare model.
Yes, under the auspices of looking after the player.
Educational, rehabilitation, changing behaviours.
Is this to this day, or has this...
This is ongoing.
This is on. Okay, so we spoke to Tom Harley, the CEO of the Sydney Swans, before. He wasn't aware of this. I'm sure you're across what's happened in federal parliament overnight. MP tells federal parliament of secret illicit drug test allegedly authorised by the league's top medicos. Now, it paints the picture that there's this agreement between clubs that, if they find themselves in a situation where they're concerned about a player, then there's a way of going around that and that player stands down. But this is all part of an agreement that has taken place between the AFL and clubs. Now, is this all news to you?
It was absolutely news to me. I mean, it would be unfair of me to comment, not having any background to it, but I, like a lot of footy fans, read that late last night, Michael Warner's article. And so, gee, that is a bomb. We throw the word around bombshell off, and that was a bombshell claim. And so, outside of just being really surprised by that, certainly nothing that I've seen. But me, like everyone, will be watching to see how this unfolds.
Well, this has been described by, and this is a direct quote from the former Melbourne doctor, Dr. Arain, that the AFL wants the players to play at all costs, so the cover-up begins. If there are legal drugs in the player's system, they're free to play. If there are drugs in the system, the players often asked to fake an injury. They're advised to lie about a condition, while the results of the off-book tests are kept secret and are never shared with the Sports Integrity Australia wider. What would you, I mean, this casts a shadow over the competition. What would you like to see happen now in regards to this in terms of the investigation into these claims?
Yeah, that's a good question, Tim. As I say, my first blank response in reading it was as a reader, and then obviously you move pretty quickly to your own club and the competition more broadly. I don't have a specific answer for you right now. Then I'll be waiting and seeing as much as anyone else. We are obviously as men's players adhere to the illicit drug policy of the AFL and also WADA, and that's, as far as I'm concerned, strict compliance. So, nothing really further to add on that, Tim, unfortunately, other than to say, well, it was a shock to read it, and me, like others, will be seeing how this unfolds in the next probably 24, 48 hours.
So should he be aware of this?
Sydney might not have a player. Now, I think it's probably
but shouldn't all the clubs be aware of this policy that's in place then with the AFL, if that's the case?
Well,
if it's widespread?
I can't speak for all 18 CEOs or presidents, but...
Yeah, so shouldn't every club know that the off-the-books testing facility is available to them?
Oh, that's for them to answer. All I can say is maybe in this exact instance, it's club doctor player privilege. The AFL are aware of it. We're not talking about 380 players, 280 players, 100 players. I think we're talking about a handful of players here, a rolling handful of players over time.
Well, we don't know because how many... hang on, just on that point.
We do know.
No, just on that point. Just on that point. The suspicion is that anyone who is a late withdrawal... Let's go back through the last round of AFL football and see anybody that was a late withdrawal from a game.
Well, yeah, because...
I mean, that is going to be the suspicion. The average fan is going to say, well, hang on a minute, late withdrawal. Oh, hang on, what's going on here?
Yeah, so people will say it's rubbish. One strikeout, you go, elite level sport, this is what you're beholden to. But the AFL standing firm on changing behaviour. They say this is the medical model, that the players are tested 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for performance-enhancing drugs, but that no other code does it like this with illicit drugs. So, they make no apologies for stopping players from taking the field with what would become a performance-enhancing drug in their system.
They just won't tell us.
They just won't tell us. Well,
I'm not. I'm just trying to get it clear for everyone. So they know. Okay, the player has arrived and he's got the drugs in his system, or he reports that he's taken drugs. So rather than let him take the field, and as Sean Smith did in this instance, and test positive, they go, no, let's take you over to Dorovic in Heidelberg. Let's see if it's in your system or not. If it's in your system, you're not playing.
Yep. And if it's not in your system, then you can play. Because under the medical model, though, they do state, and I've spoken to them this morning, as I say, the AFL do state that they don't want players playing with drugs in their system for the impact that it will also, aside from the fact they might test positive, that the impact that it might have when they start to exert themselves for their own health, they argue. So,
and if they did damage to someone else, they'd be liable.
And that any doctor or official who willingly allows a player to take the field with illicit drugs in their system, which are performance enhancing on match day, should be sacked immediately.
Okay, so now with all that, and again, you're going to be answering questions all day on this, and that's why we love having you here. So this front page bombshell then, from a Melbourne, like I'm looking at it from my Melbourne eyes and I'm worried, right? I go, well, this is not exclusive to Melbourne then, if that's the case.
No, it's not exclusive to Melbourne.
No, this happens across the board. Take your players off-site and do the off-the-books test of which the AFL know what's going on.
And look, if you're playing the PR game here, which, make no mistake, the AFL always are, then it's the clandestine nature of it that they're probably going to have a hard time reconciling.
And what did they say about that when you put it to them?
Well, that's just it's patient privilege. It's how it's always been part of the model. And I said, well, we never knew this happened. I'm sure Billy Blogs out in the street never knew it happened.
And the fans didn't know it happened.
And the fans didn't know it happened. But maybe we're not entitled to know it happens. As I say, it's for others to argue, and it will come down to personal opinion. Again, it's not applicable to all players. This might be a rolling handful of players over time. They are all randomly tested for illicit substances. We are talking about those who are target tested here, who do have a problem with illicit substances. So
we will never, and this is, again, Tim and I have been talking about this all morning. 2005, this policy came in, there's been 1 3-strike. We will never get a 3-strike.
And this is why.
So why do we have it?
But why are we pining for a 3-strike?
Well, but this is where we've got to get the education.
Why are we gagging for a player?
No, that's right. But the public and the AFL the public think, hey, we want to catch them, we want to put them out. The AFL is saying, no, it's not about catching. This is about looking after the player. Is that essentially where it's
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, but I'll show you. I could
And not
read out-
everyone's going to like it. Not everyone does like it.
Well, they don't like it because I'm looking at the text messages that are coming through. Like, I know what you were saying. I know what the AFL's saying, but there's an expectation from a lot of people that support this game financially by becoming a member of a football club don't like this. They don't like to think that any of their players are taking illicit substances, whether it be on match day or during the week or even in the off-season.
And I get that too, Tim, because people say it's an issue in society, but you're signing up for something that is elite. It's a top-tier competition. It's elite level sport. So if you've got maybe this isn't for you then, if you've got a problem with this. But
they do.
But
and
they
I'm
do,
not
and
I'm
people
not
do.
excusing it, and I'm not saying it's right, but they do. And as I said earlier to Tim, this AFL president storming into his board saying we're having a zero tolerance policy, I won't stand for it. And they turned around and said we'll have 10 players that play.
Yeah, I think just on that, if we're going to mention Glenn Bartlett specifically.
No, we weren't talking about Glenn Bartlett.
But he's cited in the story today in the Herald Sun.
But that example I'm giving just wasn't.
It's not
right.
relevant.
Okay. Yeah,
I promise you.
No, okay, but there's been a blurring of the lines over time with Glenn's initial complaints, and now it's been morphed into, well, he was never complaining about players at the time, I think is my understanding. Do you want to draw a line?
So if we were to ring the 18 club CEOs today, do you think they would be in line with what the AFL has explained to you this morning?
Look, this is not a question I've specifically asked the AFL, but of my knowledge of how the policy works and the fact that it's a welfare and it's the medical plan in place is that I'm not sure it goes beyond the player and the club doctor in the first instance.
Right, so you could have a club doctor acting on behalf of a club, but the CEO wouldn't know
possibly
what the club doctor knows about this policy.
You are taking me into areas where I'll admit I can't give you categorical
it's a secret doctor policy that's only with the AFL administration and the club doctors. Is that what you're saying?
Well, if having your medical details kept private amongst you and a doctor is then it's secret.
I'm not saying specifically the details. I'm talking about the overall explanation to this, which is not... I'm not talking about which player in particular. I'm talking about the fact that each club knows that this is the AFL's policy as stipulated by the commission down to the CEO, down to the medical officer at each club.
The clubs are given the numbers. We know that year upon year about how many players have returned a positive illicit substance test, so that they have a vague idea of where they sit in the competition.
I tell you what, again, now we've got two sides of the story, right? So whether you agree with it or you disagree with it, at least you get the explanation. I'll be interested to see how. I think you're going to be busy. The Sunrise will be calling you very shortly. Patient privacy is a law. It's not about what the fans want. That's Calvin. The big news story that Tim alluded to.
Yeah, it's terrible news. Terrible turn of events for Tom Doedee and the Brisbane Lions. So the defender has suffered a partial tear to the same ACL he was set to return from. And when I say set to return from, he was all good to go tomorrow night against Collingwood. He went down yesterday at training. He did a press conference yesterday. He said, it's good to be back. And then he's gone and partially ruptured the same ACL he was set to return from at his new club, the Brisbane Lions. So that is as cruel as it gets.
It is, Sammy. Was he returning within 12 months?
10 months.
Yeah, it was earlier than a 12-monther, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yep. 10 months.
Slightly earlier. So, obviously, Peter Wright, the 4 weeks, Max King, the 3 weeks, 1 week at the tribunal, rather, and Jacob Wettering good to go on Good Friday.
As I said, you're going to be a very busy man. There's context around it. Agree with it, disagree with it, all you want out there, and people do, but at least there is some context around it.